Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Inside Analysis Big Data Ecosystem Market Overview. We're pleased to have with us today Hannah Smalltree and John Schaefer of Treasure Data, and they're going to talk with us about their big data solution. Hannah, take it away.
Hi there. Well, thank you so much for having us on today. I'm always really excited to talk about this service. It is a new kind of cloud service, so please bear with us. It might be a new concept for some of you. Treasure Data makes a cloud service specifically for big data types, and we deal with massive volumes of data. We call our service a managed cloud service because it is delivered entirely in the cloud, and it's 100% managed, monitored, and maintained by our staff. So some people call it software as a service for big data or big data as a service. But the bottom line is we're offering our customers a complete set of big data capabilities for end-to-end data processing as a service so that they can focus their efforts on analyzing the data and getting value from it. We talk about our service as end-to-end data processing, and that's because Treasure Data makes it very easy to collect data from where it is being created. So a lot of our early customers in this diagram here, we're up here in the left corner, people who were very much involved in the internet, in sort of internet engines or large websites, and we're generating a lot of data there. Now the data that we deal with tends to be things like event and log data. So it's different than our customers and transaction records. It's more of logs and events about what is happening. So think about clicks on a web page or taps on a mobile application or moves that a player might make in a digital video game. That is the type of data that we are very good at collecting. Now our agents will sit close to where that data is being generated and stream that data into the Treasure Data service. There it is monitored and managed by our staff, and our customers can log in anytime, look at their data. John will explain to you exactly how the back-end data storage works, and run analyses on the data using our interface. So you don't need to know anything about the back-end data collection or the data infrastructure or the cloud or some of these new open source big data tools. You can just analyze your big data using our service, and we help you every step of the way getting that whole infrastructure, the data collection infrastructure set up. We also work with a lot of people who have data being generated from devices and products. So they're collecting data from sensors in vehicles or from logs coming from wearable devices or other types of mobile devices. Large volumes of data, millions and billions of events streaming in or records streaming into our service every day. And just briefly on this next screen, sorry. As I mentioned, we specialize specifically in big data. So a lot of us have heard the 3 V's of big data: velocity, volume, and variety. A lot of our customers struggle with the velocity at which this data is created. So again, think about all the taps in a mobile app, or all the clicks in a mobile game, or a product with sensors that are sending readings every few minutes. That data adds up very quickly, and it becomes very difficult to even collect, let alone manage. And it's especially difficult to manage in your own environment. And that's why services like Treasure Data exist to help manage this huge volume and velocity of data that's coming at us. And we specialize in semi-structured or multi-structured data types. So again, it's events, it's actions, it's observations, and there's some examples here on the screen. Clickstream is one a lot of us understand immediately. Mobile data, app logs, sensor data, web access logs. So this data that's created very rapidly and adds up quickly. A lot of this data is already outside of the firewall, so it's coming from remote devices or it's coming from some other sort of cloud component. So it's different than talking about, for example, moving all of your customer records. You could use our service for different types of data, but people tend to use it for this type of event data that's outside the firewall. A lot of our customers, as I've mentioned, focus on mobile apps, large websites. We have a lot in media and entertainment. They're collecting a lot of data about how people use their services, especially as media and entertainment is free and people are really trying to monetize the services and understand how we as users are using them. The kinds of things people are doing with Treasure Data include behavioral analytics, so how users behave with a product. They're using us as part of a big data refinery project where they might be landing all of their big raw data in our service, doing some aggregation and filtering to make it smaller, and then combining it with other data behind their firewall. Product research and development is another big area. We see a lot of people using Treasure data to learn more about their product, how it's working, how changes to the product affect its performance or affect the usability of the product. But I'd really like to move over to our live demo right now and introduce our Director of Sales Engineering, John Schaefer. He'll talk a little bit more in detail about how the service works and show you a demo so you can see just how easy it is to use Treasure data yourself.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Let me just share my desktop here. Okay. So as Hannah explained, Treasure data is a service designed to collect, store, and analyze data coming from mobile devices, server-side agents, web SDKs, all those different types of things. So for this demo, what I wanted to do is I just want to use this one slide, and I'll refer back to it a couple times during the demo, just to show you how we get data into Treasure data. I want to show you what that data looks like and how you use the data once it's in Treasure data. And then I want to show you how you can consume that data into a familiar tool such as Tableau, and for this case, I'm going to use Tableau. So I'm actually going to do this a little bit out of order. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to show you, the Treasure data console and what it looks like to use data once it's in Treasure data. Then I'll go back and I'll actually show you getting data in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate a scenario where I have an application running on a server, and I'm using our server-side agent to collect that data and load it into Treasure data in a streaming fashion. Just keep in mind that we do have multiple ways we can collect data, as Hannah said. We also have mobile SDKs, JavaScript SDKs, and SDKs. I'm just going to show one of these for the demonstration purposes. And then, as I said, I'll finish it up with showing you how you can push that data out to Tableau. So let me get right into it. There we go. So this is the Treasure data console. This is one of the ways that you can work with Treasure data once data is in it. This is the most popular way. It's a fully web-based UI. We also have a command line interface for if you want to be able to script, your interactions with Treasure data, or for people who just really like to work on the command line. We also have a REST API, and we also have JDBC and ODBC connectors and how you work with Treasure data. But for this demo, I'm going to use the console. So on the console, you can see we have these sections over here. Let me start off by showing you the databases. So the first thing I wanted to show is the fact that in Treasure data, all data is organized into familiar tables. And tables can be organized into databases or collections of tables. And we've done this intentionally. We're collecting multi-structured data from a variety of sources, but in order to make it consumable by people who have the questions, we want it to look very familiar to them. So we're modeling the consumption or the analysis side of our service, make it look like a database that they're familiar with. So if I pick a database, and as you can see, you can have many databases in Treasure data. If I pick a database, and if I go into a database, you can see you can have many tables. If I click into one of these tables, you can see it looks like a table. So there's a variety of different columns. The columns have types. Now, what I'll show a little bit later is that Treasure data is very flexible in the schema of the tables that we can store. So, for example, if you have an application and it's sending in records that has 4 columns, and then suddenly you update that application, you release a new version of that application, and now that application is sending, for that same record, it's sending 8 columns. What will happen is Treasure data will automatically detect those additional columns, and it'll add those columns into the table. This is really key when it comes to collecting big data, because very often when the thing that's producing the data, you may not have control over what the scheme of the data is when it's produced, or you might have multiple versions of the thing that's generating the data, whether it's a mobile app or a sensor. It might have multiple versions of those running out in the field at the same time, sending different versions of a field. So the back-end collection system needs to be able to handle multiple schemas or multiple variations of a record format, and Treasure data is built to accommodate that. To kind of illustrate this, if you look at a table, we have a multi-structured way to look at the table, and you can see here we're representing that as JSON, which is a way to represent multi-structured data. Under the covers, when we're storing this data, we're not actually storing it in a relational database table. That would be too rigid and too difficult to modify as records come in with new fields. We're actually storing it in a compressed, columnar, binary, multi-structured format that we call the Plasma engine. So this is a table. The next thing I want to show you is running a query. And so the point here is that you work with the data in Treasure Data in a very similar way that you've worked with data in any other database. So I can write a query. I can say, let's say I want to find the unique or the distinct path IDs from that table that I just showed you. I can say select distinct path ID from the path steps. I'll just leave it like that. Distinct, obviously, is, the reason why I'm choosing distinct here is just to show that we can issue interesting queries. It's not just trivial queries that we can issue. In fact, some of our customers have queries that are, hundreds of lines of SQL code. Then you can pick a database. Let me pick my pathing database, and then we have multiple engines where you can run a query on within Treasure Data. Another key concept is as data is brought into Treasure Data, the data is stored in a table, in this multi-structured binary table, and then at query time, you can choose which engine you want to issue the query. So we have a query engine that's designed for batch-oriented queries, for long-running queries that will process a lot of data. We also have query engines that are focused more on the interactive queries, like the one I'm going to run right now. So I'm going to choose a query engine, and I'm going to run it. And so it's a normal SQL statement. I submit it. I can watch it run. Once it's done, this one should return pretty fast, and it did. Once it's done, I can see the job results. I can always go back and fetch the job results from the jobs page. And it's right here. There we go. Actually, that wasn't it. Where did it? Oh, here it is. I can view the results here. I can view the log of the job. I can also download the results of this query either in a CSV or TSV or JSON. So, for example, if I wanted to pull this into Excel, do some post-processing work, I could do it there. If it's a large amount of data, then pulling it down from the web browser isn't always feasible. So we give you this little button here that very quickly shows you how to use our command line client to download that data to a server or download that data to your laptop to work on it. Let's say it's a couple gigabytes worth of data. One more thing I want to show on the queries is for any query. Actually, let me go back here. Let me pull up this query. Let's say I ran that query and I say, you know what, I like this query. This is the one I want. I can say edit as a new query, and then I can maybe modify it a little bit. And let's say I wanted this query to run on a schedule. So right here, I can save this query. I can give it a name, and I can give it a schedule. So I can have this query run on a periodic schedule. For example, if I wanted to always process the last web clicks or events that came in the past hour, and I wanted to calculate some hourly averages, I could do that. I can also take the results of this query, and what I showed you in the previous page was I ran the query and I just fetched the results right from Treasure Data. I can also push the results out to a variety of different locations. I can push the query results out directly to a relational database, such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Redshift. I can push it out to a storage location, such as an FTP site or S3 site, or I can push it out to Tableau Server, which I'm going to demonstrate, or I can save the results back into Treasure Data as a new table. So that's databases and queries. The last thing I want to highlight in the console is, if you recall, we have all these different databases. In a Treasure Data account, you can have many different users. And what you can do is for each user that is in your account, you can control on a database level whether they have no access, import access, query access, or full access. So we have database level, user level access controls. And this is a feature that a lot of our customers requested. And the reason why is what they wanted to do is they wanted to have multiple teams using Treasure Data, each team having their own kind of private databases that they could work in. But then certain power users or cross-functional users needed to have access to be able to access data across multiple databases. And so you can control that on a user level and a database level. Okay, so what I've done is, so I've shown you what you can do with data once it's in Treasure Data, showed you the console. Now let me go back and show you an example of how we get data into Treasure Data. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my laptop as a simulation of one of these servers with the agent running on it. So what I have here is I just have some Java code that I wrote, and this Java code is going to simulate an application that's doing something. In this case, all I'm doing is I'm just grabbing a bunch of pre-generated records from a file just because people don't like to sit there and watch data be generated in a demo. So I pull those records in, and I just submit them to the Treasure Agent. Now, what we're doing here is my Java program is very simple, as you can see, because we're using a library, a Treasure Data library that sends the data to the agent. And so the only parts of the code that deal with Treasure Data is setting up the Treasure Data logger, and then really it's this command right down here, which basically for every record I'm generating, in this case I'm reading from a file, I package it up in an object, and I just submit it to Treasure Data. So the amount of code that you have to put into any existing application is very minimal. It's really just some initialization code and a single line to just send that data to the Treasure Agent. And that's the job of the Treasure Agent and the libraries, to make it really easy for you to integrate this into your application. Now on my laptop, I have a Treasure Agent running. And so this is just the log file of the Treasure Agent. So as I send data from my application to the Treasure Agent, you'll see some status appear here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this data to a database called John. And I'm actually, see this actions table? And you can see I've been doing some loading into it. I'm going to load a bunch of actions. And these actions are, just think of them as like web clicks or click streams. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into this table, and I'm actually going to delete this table. I'm going to actually get rid of the table completely. So there's, after I refresh the page, there's no table. And so when I go into my application and I submit and I create some data and I send it into Treasure Data, not only is Treasure Data going to automatically figure out what columns it needs, it's actually going to realize there's no table, and it's actually going to create the table for me. So I go into my application. Here's my log of my agent. All I'm going to do is just hit go, and you can see what it's done is it's generated a bunch of records, and this is essentially think of it like a clickstream record where there's a timestamp, a session ID, a user ID, and some URL that somebody clicked on. If I go look at my agent, you can see the agent took the data. You can see the agent actually realized there was no table, so it created the table. And then if I go into my database and hit refresh, we see that we have a table, and we have 1,000 records. Just to show that it's happening in real time, let me just set another 1,000 records. We can see it's uploading logs, and if I go to here and refresh, then we should see 2,000 records. So now I have a table. I have a bunch of fields in it. Let me run a query. So I can come over here, and I can say, let's just say we want to know what are the most popular URLs. So select URL and then count star as hits, number of hits. We want to group by URL, and let's do an order by hits descending because we want to see the most popular ones at the top. I want to pick my database. I'm going to pick my interactive engine. Since I'm not doing a big batch job, I just want to get the answer. I'm not going to send the results anywhere because I just want to view them in my browser, so I hit run. So I hit run. I must have a syntax error. Let's see. Actually, let me go back and that's why. I forgot the from actions. It's important to write your SQL properly. Okay, so now it's running, and should return here in just a second. Oh, I got another error. Let's see, what did I do here? Yes. It's actually the John database, not the passing database. Okay, I think we're good to go. All right, so basically count up the URLs and the number of hits and show me count them up by the number of hits. So you can see here, obviously, the home page is the most common one. The point here is that the data, I generated the data, and within seconds, or well, if I would have gotten my SQL correct, within seconds I would have been able to query that data. Now let me take it one step further. So I'm basically sending. Let me go back to here. I'm basically sending. John actions. 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to modify my app. Right. I'm going to modify my app. I'm just going to add in another column. And for this, I'm just going to take this column here and just duplicate it. Maybe what I'll do is I'll actually take two two of the columns just duplicate. So I'm kind of fabricating some data here, but what I'm trying to show is that the schema of my record has just changed. It's essentially just added in an extra column to my application. I don't have to worry about the downstream collection catching it. It is just going to catch it. So let me run it. It sends the record, and now if I go into my database, refresh. There you go. I have my records. Now if I look at my table, oops, I called it, let's do this. I forgot to change the name of the field. Let's do that. See, it's gone in. Let's hit refresh on the table, and there you go. So now I have a new column that's popped in because Treasure Data received a record that has this new field that it's never seen before. So it dynamically adds these columns as it receives the data. So one last thing I want to show you is the consumption side. So we've brought data in, we've worked with the data. Now I want to push it out to Tableau so that business users can use it. What we've done in Treasure Data is we've made it so that you can run a query. Actually, let me do this. We've made it so that you can run a query and send the results out to a Tableau server. In this case, I'm sending it to a Tableau online account. And so this is an example of a query that I wrote, and I sent the results out to a Tableau server. And what happens is when you run the query, you just select Treasure Data. I'm sorry, Tableau server as the results output. And then you give it some information about which data source, what to call the data source, which project, and what kind of mode. When you do that, when you run it, it creates a TDE file, which is a Tableau data extract file. If we scroll way down here, we can see at the end of the job, it is converting recorded results to a TDE file, and it sends that into Tableau. So if I were to go into Tableau and go into the data sources, what I'll see is I will now see a data source appear called a Tableau data extract. Now this is a standard Tableau data extract file. If any of you used Tableau before, you're familiar with this. I can take this data source and I can create a new workbook on it by saying new workbook. Or I can hook up Tableau desktop to Tableau server. I can pull down that data source. I can work on it in Tableau desktop, and I can push it back up. And then as an example, what I did here is I just took that data source, Quakes, and I created a workbook just to show that you can work with this data once it's in Tableau. So we push that result set as a Tableau desktop, a TDE file, and it functions just like every other TDE file within Tableau. So that concludes my demo. Just to wrap up again, what I showed was I showed we could take data in a multi-structured data that had a changing schema, load it into Treasure Data. As soon as it's loaded in, we could get access to it and run SQL queries, and then we can either work with the data in Treasure Data, or we can push that data out to applications such as Tableau, or we can even push it out to databases or other applications.
And best of all, I know John showed a bunch of technical things, but to a database person, that was very straightforward operation. So you get all of these capabilities in the matter of weeks. We've gotten customers set up in a matter of hours. We say 2 weeks is our stated setup time. So rather than spending months and months building a data infrastructure, you can get these capabilities very quickly and just with a monthly subscription fee. So rather than making a big upfront investment, monthly fee, get up and running in weeks, and have all of these capabilities that John just showed off. So treasuredata.com has more information, and we're happy to answer more questions right now.
Okay, well, one question that, I mean, you know, is possibly going to be in the mind of most people that actually look at this. Is there any particular constraints in terms of the data sources that you can actually connect to this? I mean, you know, is there anything like bandwidth limitation, data cap, or anything? You know, is it feasible to connect multiple databases from within one's own data center, as well as have data sources out in the cloud or supplier sites or whatever? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've built Treasure Data to be able to handle very large, massive data sets coming in. For example, we have one customer in Europe that's sending us over 12 billion records a day. That's about half a billion records an hour. That's just one of our customers. One of our other largest customers is on the other side of the planet in Japan, sending us similar data rates. So in terms of the data rates, it's designed to handle very, very high data rates. Also, any particular customer can send data from multiple sources simultaneously. So for example, you could have data coming directly from mobile apps through our mobile SDK. You could have data coming through servers coming through our Treasure Agent at the same time, and at the same time, data coming from the JavaScript SDK, while all along you're doing scheduled batch bulk loads that are consuming data extracts from CRM systems or some other system that you have some reference data that you'd like to combine with all that data.
Okay, and at the other end of the game, you can clearly export to various BI applications. Is there any particular constraint on that? Does one actually, do you actually approve specific applications for use of Treasure Data, or is it just a fairly simple ODBC SQL interface, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we strive to be able to work with all of the common tools, data analyst tools, and so we're always open. If a customer has a specific tool that they want to work with, if we haven't worked with it before, we're willing to try to work with it. We do have a JDBC ODBC interface, and so that's kind of like the generic catch-all for everything. For Tableau, as we worked with Tableau, we realized that there's a lot of power in being able to push that TDE file into Tableau, so we built that specific integration for them. In terms of JDBC and ODBC, we support that. So you can hook up any JDBC, ODBC tool to us. The one thing is that not all JDBC, ODBC tools use the same dialect of SQL, if you will. And so we do like to, if a customer tries to use a new tool and it doesn't quite work, then we just work with them to work with that manufacturer. We'll find out what SQL is not working, and we just either adjust our system or we work with the BI tool vendor to certify us as a source for that BI tool.
Okay. And in terms of the customers you've got, I'm kind of interested just because nowadays when people talk about cloud, there's an awful lot of discussion about things like hybrid operation. Clearly to have a capability like this in the cloud can obviously be very, very useful, but if I want to do things like use that as my kind of data hub from which I throw data out. Do you have customers that kind of do that and are sending data out to the cloud and then drawing back into the data center or pushing it up and down supply chains? Do you have that kind of what I would call sophisticated rather than just one-stop operation for the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a very common pattern that we see. Because a lot of people have existing, I'll just use this part of the diagram. A lot of people have existing infrastructure. So they have data warehouses, they have BI tools, they have, ETL environments and that sort of thing. And those are in place and they want to keep them, but now they have these new data sources, these new big data sources. And so they might have, it might be event data coming from mobile apps, website, whatever it may be. If you just take those new big data sources and try to put them into your existing ETL flow and your data warehousing flow, you're going to break stuff because the schema is changing too quickly and the volumes are too high. So what a lot of customers are doing is they're using Treasure Data to kind of sitting on top of their existing infrastructure, and they're using Treasure Data to collect, store, and aggregate and distill down that big data, and then take the results of that distillation process and push it into the existing information flow, whether it be into the ETL process or directly into the data warehouse. So this is one of the reasons why we have these results push capabilities. We can push directly to databases, or we can push to FTP sites. So an ETL tool could pick up the data and start working with it, or push directly to certain applications in case there's we need to push to, let's say, a data federation layer or something like that.
Wow, that's very impressive. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, I guess I do have one. Your cloud data store, is that like sitting on top of Amazon, or how are you handling that? And then it's obviously infinite. Are you like kind of charging by scaling out, by amount of storage, by seat? How does that work?
Yeah, so we actually have multiple different environments that we're running. Our primary environment is today running on top of the Amazon infrastructure. A key point about that is we are using Amazon as essentially as our data center, but we have not designed this to run strictly in Amazon. We've designed it so that we can run it on multiple cloud platforms, and we've actually done that. We've ported it to another cloud platform for a different region of the globe. And so yes, we're using Amazon. I think the second question was pricing. Yep. So our pricing model, we're a subscription-based service. So we're providing an end-to-end service. So therefore, we use a subscription model. It's a monthly flat rate. So once we talk to a customer and agree upon a subscription price, that's a rate that you pay until your situation changes, in which case we can talk about a plan change. But that's in contrast to a lot of services that charge by the event or by the record. Some feedback we got early on from customers is they don't like a model where 1 month they're paying $10, next month they're paying $4,000. They much prefer to kind of to predict and even that out, and then pay a flat monthly rate that's a lot easier to budget and to get approval for with the finance team. The metrics that we use for the pricing is based on the amount of data you're bringing in and storing, and how much processing horsepower you want for your queries. So in other words, how fast you want your queries to go. And it's our job to work with a customer to figure those out based on what they're trying to do. We're trying to make it as easy as possible, so we're not expecting our customers to be experts in sizing. That's our job to help them with that.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was just going to mention that if anybody else wanted to get hands-on and play with the console, if you go to treasuredata.com, you will find a link that says try it for free, and you can get on there, no credit card needed, and get hands-on with it. Excuse me, you can use our sample data, or you can upload some of your own data. We actually have a free service that you can continue to use for smaller volumes of data, which for us is millions of rows. If you have millions of rows instead of billions of rows, then you can use it for free for a period of time. So I really encourage you to get hands-on and try it there. If you're not a hands-on type, we have plenty of resources for a variety of levels, technical resources or more executive level resources that we hope will help you sell the value of big data to your internal team. So a lot of resources, some good hands-on work, and we really encourage you to get in touch and let us know if we can answer any of the questions for you.
Well, thanks so much. This has been a fabulous demo from Treasure Data. We've been hearing from Hannah Smalltree and John Schaefer. Go check them out, treasuredata.com. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye.